Aer Lingus pilots have voted to back a new pay deal marking the end of the long-running dispute between the airline and the Irish Airline Pilots Association, IALPA. Ballots closed at 9 a.m. on Tuesday for IALPA members, with pilots voting to back the 17.75% pay rise recommended by the Labour Court by 85% on a 96% turnout. Well, Eoghan Corry, travel commentator and editor of the Air and Travel magazine from Our Clock, is with me on the line. He's been following this story since it's all emerged over the last while. Good morning, Eoghan, and welcome back.
Good morning, and from Our Clock being the most important part.
Absolutely.
Good morning, and good morning to Eoghan with an I from Eoghan with a G.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a drama, a bit more drama than it should have been. All of this could have been achievable, to my mind, much earlier in the cycle. We had IALPA, a new president in IALPA, flexing his muscles, and I think he really needed to have his one day of strike. There was only one day of strike, but they had a work to rule that caused about a lot of Aer Lingus cancellations, about 10 a day, running at its peak. The result seems to be a good one, and it was not achieved by face-to-face negotiations. It was achieved by the Labour Court. It just shows what a bit of experience, Eoghan, in industrial relations can bring. Labour Court did something magical. They changed the 3-year cycle to a 4-year cycle, got the pay increase, which is the headline figure everybody looks at, up to somewhere halfway between the two sides. And we have peace in our time. The pilots all voted 85% in favour. They are a very loyal bunch of gentlemen and ladies. They tend to do what the executive tells them. It's a real pity all of this wasn't achieved earlier in the cycle, and the passengers hadn't the pants frightened out of them as they approached the summer holidays.
Industrial action had been suspended by the union almost 2 weeks ago after its executive told members that it should back the deal. However, given Aer Lingus had been cancelling services in advance during the ongoing work to rule, normal service only resumed at the airline last Wednesday. So you mentioned there how passengers had the pants frightened off them. How many passengers actually had maybe flights cancelled, were left stranded? Did it get to that stage where it was, really, really disruptive?
Okay, the number of flights cancelled was quite high. The reality is that what Aer Lingus did was they protected the transatlantic, so those very important transatlantic flights. And you've got to remember, 1/3 of Aer Lingus passengers every day, it's not like the old days, Owen, 1/3 of Aer Lingus passengers just touch down in Dublin and take off again. They're coming from England or Europe, going to America or vice versa. So they protected transatlantic, and when they cut the flights, they cut 2 a day off Heathrow, and they were able to move passengers around, get them on other flights. While passengers were discommoded, the vast majority were just reallocated a flight rather than being told your flight isn't flying, and a very small number took refunds. We don't know how much it cost Aer Lingus, but it certainly cost them a packet. They'll know by next Friday, by the way. They'll have a costing of that for the results on Friday week when their Aer Lingus are issuing a statement.
I'm looking as well. IALPA President Mark Tighe welcomed the deal, saying this is the greatest pay award seen in 30 years for Aer Lingus pilots. Throughout negotiations, management were seeking work practice changes to fund our pay award. So the pilots are heading off here fierce happy.
Yeah, you see, Mark is doing a couple of things there. The 30 years is really important. That's the length of time that his predecessor was president of IALPA. His predecessor, Eoghan Cullen, was regarded as quite robust, and he had some epic battles with Willie Walsh when Willie Walsh was CEO of Aer Lingus in 2003 and 2008. Mark Tighe was always critical that Eoghan Cullen wasn't tough enough with Aer Lingus. So he's sort of parading that as an internal IALPA, flag. He also had to win the vote. He had to convince the pilots that they were getting a good deal. The deal 24% was what they looked for, 18% was what they got, 12% is what Aer Lingus was offering. Sounds like something out of a horse fair. Somebody trying to sell a horse will go halfway between the two. But A lot of it also went on productivity. The pilots were very reluctant to give up on productivity, and that's where Aer Lingus won. We have a very exuberant, Mark Tighe telling us it was a great deal and it was the highest pay award, which it was in 30 years. The other side of that is that Aer Lingus had probably given away too many hours on the short-haul flights. Or long-haul flights are less important. The short-haul flights, in their crewing agreement in 2019, the pilots were given, they worked 600 hours a year. And the Ryanair pilots, which are up against, Aer Lingus and Ryanair are competing on 90% of their routes. So Aer Lingus are competing with Ryanair when Ryanair pilots are working 800 hours. So what Aer Lingus were probably looking for was those 200 hours back. And while the Labour Court looked at that, what they did something magical again. They did something very clever, and they said, let's pretend the 2019 crewing agreement never existed. Let's reject that. Both sides were very happy to do that. And the reason the pilots they were fine. They had landed themselves. A lot of it is to do with the number of hours of holiday you can take during the summer. Pilots want to take holidays during the summer like the rest of us. It's a big problem because everyone else is on holiday, so pilots are in demand during the summer. So the 2019 crewing agreement had a disadvantage for the pilots as well because when COVID came, it meant that they started accumulating a debt under one of the clauses of that, and some of them owed about €30,000. So that was written off by the Labour Court. The Labour Court said those hours are back in train for Aer Lingus. So Aer Lingus actually are happy enough coming out of it as well. It's a great example. Industrial relations is complex. And you can go in and shout at each other and then everybody go and strike. That's what we saw. It happened years and years ago. You see it on Reading in the Years. Or you can have an inventive, creative approach to it. And I wish all of that had happened last February, not after everybody's flight. The disruption wasn't great. The fear factor was even worse, Owen.
But when we look now at, we're coming out the other side of it. The pilots are happy with the pay increase that they've...
Aer Lingus are happy as well.
Aer Lingus are happy.
Yeah.
But what about the relationship between the two now? I mean, Mark Tighe is saying that the management at Aer Lingus had destroyed the relationship with the pilots and it remained to be seen if it could be rebuilt. So they're happy coming out of this, but are they happy with each other?
It'll be like Ardclough and Eoghan in the old days, the hurling finals. They will dust each other off, dust themselves off and shake hands and go back, get their teeth repaired and go back to business. Industry, a lot of this debate and this dispute has been carried out on the airwaves with grandiose statements, and the pilots particularly had to work on their public support, which I thought they did a fantastic job on. These guys are earning $250,000 a year, and they're looking for a pay increase of $49,000. They got an increase of $33,000, and they're working 600 hours a year for that. So it was very hard to get public support because these guys didn't exactly sound like Jim Larkin in 1913. But they did really, really well. Very strong rhetoric. And part of what you've just pointed out there, the relationship is damaged forever. We'll never be able to talk to each other again. All of that. That's part of the rhetoric that happens in industrial relations. Hard things are said in the negotiating room. People walk out of the meeting. I've been at a few in my own career. I've been at a few situations where people have walked out of a room in an industrial relations negotiation, and you think it's all over, and then it isn't. So I would expect as if nothing had happened, everything going again. And the really important thing out of it, are we going to expect this next summer, the summer after, and the summer after? No. We've got a 4-year pay cycle. We've got Mark Tighe has proven to his members that 30 years, best pay deal in 30 years, he's proven to his members he's better than his predecessor, Eoghan Cullen, and that Eoghan Cullen would dispute that, of course. And he now has the credibility that he needed taking over from such a long-standing president of IALPA. Aer Lingus have, on the other side, probably a little bit more credibility within the IAG group, because Aer Lingus is effectively a Spanish airline now, who before negotiating this deal and getting this deal over the line with the Irish pilots. The really important, Owen, as well, is that Aer Lingus lost, and Ireland as a nation lost two of the two cutting edge, the two most exciting aircraft to arrive on the scene this year. They're on show in the Farnborough Air Show at the moment. The A321XLR, it's a narrow-body aircraft that goes further, can go beyond Chicago for the first time. So it's really important. The Aer Lingus were allocated the very first two off the production line in the world. We lost those because of the IALPA dispute. They've gone to Iberia instead within the IAG group. IAG are paying for them. It does look, though, that the next four, which looked like they were lost to Aer Lingus, are now coming. So there is damage done, but it's not irretrievable. And I think while IALPA rushed through all that process, WRC, Labour Court, I think they wanted to get on the roundabout with their posters, and they wanted to have a strike just to show how powerful they were and show their muscle. And it was devastating for politicians and everyone else looking in to say, why are we going on strike when we have all these safeguards and all these checks and balances in the industrial relations system? But once we've got over that, I think it's over. I think they will dust themselves down, as I say, like Art Lock and Aer Oak in the old days, and as if nothing has happened, go back to business.
Well, Aer Lingus pilots have voted to back that new pay deal, which marks the end of the long-running dispute between the airline and the Pilots Association. They're backing the 17.75% pay rise, and that should clear things up now. And anybody who has flights with Aer Lingus over the course of the rest of the summer and into the Christmas months shouldn't be affected. Thanks to Eoghan Corry, lead travel commentator and editor of the Air and Travel magazine. Thanks again for joining us, Eoghan.